Okay, everyone. Now it's finally time for what we all have been waiting for, the keynote speak. And we will do this keynote session as a Q&A session, so we will be talking and I will be asking stupid questions and you will be giving clever answers, which is great. And we will end up with a session at the end where you can ask your own questions, of course. So, let me grab my water. Please tell us, who are you? Where are you from?
We're from France. Hello everyone, thank you for coming. You were quite a lot, so it's good. Sorry in advance for the bad English. As French people, we don't speak English like you Swedish people are quite good, so sorry for that. So my name is Raoul Barbet. I'm one of the two co-game directors with Michel of Life is Strange. Just to talk maybe quickly about my experience before. I come from an engineer school, and my first experience in a video game was for Quantic Dream. I've worked on Heavy Rain during 2 years, 1 year on motion capture, all the cinematographic process, and 1 year in the design team for Heavy Rain. After I've worked in animation for MacGuff animation studio in Paris. They have made the Despicable Me series, and I came to DONTNOD for the first game of DONTNOD, Remember Me, a sci-fi action game, where I met Michel, and so now we're working, both of us, on Life is Strange.
And so, hello everybody, so my name is Michel. I started my career with an illustration school, and I worked for 6 or 7 years as an illustrator, freelance illustrator, working on book covers and card games, RPG games. And slowly I switched it to video games as a concept artist, and that's when I joined DONTNOD Entertainment it was almost 7 years ago, to work on Remember Me, at first as a concept artist, and then I was offered a job to become the art director on Remember Me. And when we finished this game, we started a new project, and so with Raoul we worked as game directors on Life is Strange.
Awesome, thank you. And you are both game directors for Life is Strange right now, and you're also the art director.
Yeah, we are sharing most of the creative work on the game as game director, but we have some of our specialties, and I'm more on the art side, and Raoul, you more on the camera side and some of the design part. But we are mostly working together on everything. That's what was really interesting, because it's not easy sometimes to work as two heads on a project, but also that's something that really brings creativity sometimes to a higher level, I think.
Yeah, for the project, it's not a big team. We can say that we've been 40 at the peak of the production for Life is Strange for the whole season. So yeah, for 40 people with 2 game directors, this is also something we wanted to have, to be close to all the team and know really well the team and the people inside.
Awesome. And right now you're having a big hit with Life is Strange. An awesome game.
Thank you. Yeah, the final episode has been released just a few days ago, at the end of October, and we're really happy with the reception of the press, of the players, and it was a really hard project. We will show you a small trailer of one of the episodes, and it was really a different project, something that was a bit hard to sell to the publishers, and because it's really different, we'll talk more about it. But we're really happy that everything we wanted to make in this game, I think it's quite resonated quite well with the players and with the press, and that was a great adventure, and we're really happy how it worked out.
So just before we run the trailer, how would you describe the game in like one sentence?
Okay, that's not always easy in one sentence, but so Life is Strange is what we call an episodic modern adventure game that focuses more on the storytelling, the character development, more than on action or puzzles. And maybe just to give a quick idea of the story, it tells the story of Max Caulfield, an 18 years old girl who just came back to her hometown of Arcadia Bay in Oregon after spending 5 years in Seattle, and she will meet again her former childhood friend, Chloe, and the game is about their rekindle their friendship. She will have to readjust about what is life to coming back to this place when she doesn't know a lot of people. And there will be mysteries because there will be investigating the disappearance of another student, and we have supernatural elements that we will see in the trailer.
Yes, that's a great sentence.
It's never easy to sum up the game in one sentence.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
So I think we will run, for you guys that haven't seen the game, we will run a trailer from the game, and it's actually from the last episode. So spoiler alerts, if you don't want to know anything about how it wraps up, then you should leave. No, don't leave, but you can check your email or something. My slide assistant, Fredrika, can you please launch the trailer? Interesting topics.
A lot of.
What? Where? The dark room. Come on. I feel like I'm in some kind of dream nightmare.
What are you doing in my door?
The more I use my power,
That gun away from me, psycho! No!
the more I see how little control I have over what happens.
What kind of friend are you?
I don't think I'll ever know how much destiny I'm changing.
Victoria, listen to me.
And the winner is...
Oh my god!
Rachel in the dark room. Oh my god. Kate wasn't the first. Max, come on. Think. I need to change fast to make it right again. I have to go back in time. Time to change time.
I know exactly where I'm going!
So we could get real justice, and nobody is gonna get in my way. I'm with you to the end, Chloe.
Nathan is dangerous.
Where is he? Warren, do you believe me?
Of course I believe you. You're the most amazing person I've ever met.
I think that the storm started, and everything started when I found out I could rewind time. All this destruction is my fault. I can't let that happen. I can still change things. I just wish I could trust my powers.
Thanks.
It's
Thank
a
you.
fantastic game. It's a fantastic game. I really love it. I'm such a fanboy.
Thank you.
How did you come up with the concept behind the game?
So the first game of DONTNOD was a sci-fi action game when you were playing Nilin, what we call a memory hunter, and you can modify as a player some memory of people, and by changing those memory you will make very small changes and have huge consequences on the relation with those people, and the fact that those sequences we call memory remixes, where very cinematographic. We love to design them, and we thought about maybe keep this idea, but behind a whole game and a whole mechanism for a game. So we quickly come to an adventure style game because both of us love this kind of game, and we could talk about this choice and consequences aspect with all the choices a player can do in an adventure game. So yeah, very quickly we come to this story, and with the episodic format because we wanted to explore a different way to tell a story. I think we have seen a lot of course, with also the Telltale series, some new way of telling a story in a game. As we are also a huge fan of TV series, we can learn a lot from that, and it's really something on a production point of view and on a creative point of view we wanted to have. You have to write the story and write even the puzzles, the gameplay elements of the games in a different way to fit each episode, and to be sure that the player have all because you will have all the controls on the pacing of the player, so it's really something different. So we wanted to test that. So. And for the story, maybe Michel.
Yeah, like Raoul said, it all started with the rewind mechanism. We kind of got from our previous game, and then we started to brainstorm everything based on that. That we have this rewind mechanism. You can go back in time at any moment, and then we started to think about what kind of character, what kind of story would be the best for, which would make the most sense when with that kind of power. And that's why, for example, we developed the character of Max Caulfield, the main character. She's a teenage girl who has issues in her life to go forward, to take decisions, and she's always looking back, looking to her past. And when you give this kind of character the rewind power, it's interesting because it really resonates with our own personality. And that was the same for the setting, high school, because it's something where most of our players have experienced high school at a moment in their life, so that was a good way to go back to this theme of nostalgia and going back and going to the past. So we really tried to work on the game, on every aspect on the game, thinking about the rewind and the time, the nostalgia and the time aspects in mind when we were creating everything on the game.
Yeah, and the story is quite deep and multi-layered. I mean, how is the writing process? Are all people in the company involved? Or do you have dedicated writers or more traditional game designers? Or do you have like TV series writers with experience from that?
Exactly. We started really on the beginning with a really small team. We were like 5 or 6 at most. And we worked with a French writer whose name is Jean-Luc Cano. He worked on some TV shows in France. And we really worked with him on the story, having in mind, like what Raoul said, this TV show way of telling the story, knowing that we had those 5 episodes. So we had a basic story at the beginning, from beginning to the end of the game, and then we started to really rework it, both of us and with the game designers, to think about how the scenes would work really as a game, because the first story was mostly a book or a movie story where it was really linear, and then we need to really think of each scene, of what the player will experience, of interactivity, how we can really put the player in control of each of these scenes. So we worked that a lot. And when we had this full game script with every scene, with the branching, with the choices, and with the different paths the player can make, then we did hire an American writer whose name is Christian Devine, who lives in San Francisco and Portland, so he really knows well the part of the United States where the game takes place. And he worked on every dialogue and every final text that's in the game. We worked that with him, so we were really sure that the way the characters are speaking, everything in the game was really close to realism within the United States, because I think it's the most important part in this kind of narrative game, if the dialogues and the characters and the story feels right. And since we are a French studio, basically we couldn't have just written and translated the dialogues. We really needed someone from the United States to write the good dialogues for those characters.
As it's also a lot of teenagers talking, it's quite difficult to find the good tones, and even for text message, for example, it's really complicated even for us to understand French text message from teenagers. So American, it's worse. So yeah, we really wanted to find the good writer, and we're really happy to have found Christian for that.
Awesome. And you mentioned the rewind feature. You can go back in time and change certain decisions, and you have those quite complex moral decisions where you can choose your path through the game, and some of those choices are really like complex, and there is no right or wrong. Was it hard to design that game and all the different ways play the game?
Yeah, exactly. This is something we will really keep in mind during the whole production, is to not have black and white choices, as we didn't want to have black and white characters. We really wanted to show as in reality that every characters are more gray, and you couldn't find good and bad aspects in those characters. So for the choices, it's the same. The idea or ultimate goal would be to have 50% for each choice, because it has to be difficult to, even if those choices are everyday life choice, we didn't want to have, like in some other games who are different, which are different, to kill this guy or this guy, because as we have never personally have to make this kind of choice in the real life, so we wanted to use more common choices, but who which are also very difficult to take. So
Which can be even more difficult because people can relate to it, I think.
Yeah.
Some choices are very emotional. If you change the slide. Yeah, this is Kate. Can you tell us about her?
Maybe we won't tell exactly about her to not spoil everything, but this is one kind of choice, and that's something that was really important for us in Life is Strange, is to deal with, like Raoul said, with everyday life choices, and even more with real life issues, real life themes that might not be seen so often in video games. A lot of indie games are talking about those really serious issues, like games like Paper Please, or there is a lot of really, really great ideas in the indie scene. But when you start to have a publisher, sometimes it's harder to talk about that, and we were really lucky to be able to deal with that. So we really try to have a lot of real issues talked about in the game, like cyberbullying, like domestic violence, teen issues, even suicide, or I won't say every themes we have because don't want to spoil the later episodes, but that was one of our goal for this game, to talk with that, and that was also one of the biggest challenge, because when you're dealing with this kind of really serious real issues, you need to be really, really careful what you are doing with it. So we tried our best, and working with the writer, working with the team to make a lot of research on those subjects, to be sure that we would deal with that on a really sensible way and not hurt any feelings or shock or just be wrong when we are talking about that. And I hope we did it in a good way, and that was really one of the challenges, one of our most important goals with this game.
You can change to the next slide. Here's another choice. You're in an office and you have the chance to steal some money or actually leave the money. And it sounds like a simple choice. I mean, morally, yeah, maybe we should just leave the money, don't steal it. But if you steal it, you can use it to help a friend. It might be good. And personally, I find those choices very hard. Should I do something illegal or
exactly? This is, like you say, you can see maybe the short-term consequences when you're doing the choice. This is also, we've got a lot of discussion about this, because if you have the rewind power in real life, I think you will try to redo this discussion again and again until it's the perfect one. But
it's perfect.
It will never be perfect, in fact. So the idea behind the game was also that Max has to learn and has to understand that if she wants to grow up, she has to make the choices and live with it, even if it's not the best, because for us there is no best choices. So that's why we don't want to have good or bad choices. It's more great choices, and the important is to live with the consequences. So you could see as a player the short-term consequences, accept your choice, but of course you will have long-term consequences which will be different. So this kind of easy choice maybe is not so easy to take.
Can show the next example of that. This is more for fun. You have some very... I just skip that. Next slide.
Yeah, this is those dialogue system you can see. So yeah, there is a lot of dialogues in the games, and yeah, our writer is quite good at that.
And sometimes as a player, you don't know which decisions are important or not. Like the previous one, I can choose either one, but does it make any difference? I don't know as a player, which is kind of interesting, I think.
Yes, you will know directly the direct consequence, but the idea was really that sometimes it can really come back at you later in the game with a way different, a consequence really different of what you expected. And this is like a metaphor of, like in life, you don't know for sure what good choices are, because sometimes you just have to like you said, to deal with what will happen next, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and we try to reflect that in the game.
And on a design point of view, you ask for the design of the choices. So we try to have consequences because we show to the player that they will have some consequences with a little butterfly. And so this is something we really wanted to have, to have real consequences for each choices in every episode. So it means that we've got like a huge tree at the end of the season. But the idea was really to, like you said at the beginning, to give the players the feeling that it's really his story, and even if we've got a story to tell, for sure, so we know what is going to come after, but the player will be able to choose how the story will be told, and yeah, you've got a lot of consequences all over the game. So this is something we wanted to have, to not lie to the player, just saying some consequences and you've got anything. It could be like a new text message, a new character in a scene, a new scene, change in the dialogues, some small things like that. When you play, you really have the feeling that it's your story.
And you also have statistics. You get a summary after every episode, so which is very interesting. You can see how you did and how other people ended up with this. Have you learned anything about humanity?
That's really interesting. And on this screenshot, it's weird because you have 100% and 0. I don't know if you were connected when you did play or not. Doesn't seem. But yeah, it was really interesting. We have failed, of course, if it was like that. We didn't really. It was interesting when we are making the different choices. We are, of course, thinking of making an art choice. But when we are looking at the statistics, sometimes it was really interesting just on a social point of view, because it quite reflects what the players are doing. And we've seen that still most of the players like to be good. It's still a tendency of doing the right choice, which is interesting on a human level, I guess. But on some choices, it was interesting because there is one choice. It's not a big spoiler. Like in one episode, you have Kate, who is asking the main character. She thinks that she has been drugged and abused at a party, and she asks the player, "Should I go to the police or should I wait for more evidence?" And you think that basically the answer would be go to the police because basically you think that you were abused. And the choice was almost 50-50. And it kind of reflects our society when you can see that victims of abuse, most of the time they don't want to go to the police because of fear of consequences or something else. And even the players were replicating this. So, and another choice, and that's completely different with a dog, we've seen that nobody wants to hurt a dog. It was like 95% versus 5% about hurting an animal. So sometimes we can use it as game creator when we are making the next episode, looking at what the choice the player made in the previous episode. But it's mostly interesting in a social point of view. It's interesting to look at.
Yeah. Okay. You can skip to the next slide. I think you can. Yeah, this is interesting as well. You have a lot of like hidden messages, and you're flirting with other TV series and stuff. Is that important, you think, to have that kind of like funny stuff that you can look around for or share on communities? And or do you just do it because you think it's fun yourself, or maybe a weird question?
No. Yeah, it's also about details. It's we talk about Easter eggs maybe after, but this is something really important for us, the details in a game. I think it's important when the player wants to take his time and to explore the environment that he's got some rewards for that. This is really something since the beginning of the project. The slow pacing aspect of the game is really important, and it's something difficult to explain because a lot of players and a lot of publishers are used to with games to always tell the player to go on, giving back the objectives always. This is exactly what we didn't want to do. We wanted the player to, if he wants, stay and sit on a fountain, for example, and look at the other students in the campus, something you could do in the real life. Or go into your room and play guitar on your sofa. This is some feelings which are really interesting when you play a game, to really control this slow pace. So you have to give rewards for the players when they do that, because if, for example, if you go on the fountain and you can add some new camera shots, you can add some music, some new layer of the music, some voiceover of Max describing the city and the relation with the other characters. So giving those rewards will push the player to do this again and again, and maybe to have a look at every element in the environment. So we really wanted to have a lot of storytelling by the environment, So here, for example, of course, it's the license plate, and for the name we used like if you can recognize some TV series maybe for the name, but this is this kind of small elements I think who push the player to, because it's fun to design it as a game creators, and also it's really fun for the player to play this kind of to find this kind of details.
And since it's an adventure game, this is something you have in every adventure game. You can look at objects and interact with the environment. And something we really didn't want to do in Life is Strange is to have useless interactions. Like, I don't want to look at a bottle and have Max thinking, oh, it's a bottle. So we really tried, and we tried our best to that everything the player can interact with will bring another layer to the story, either the story of Max, because she can think that, oh, I remember this is the same brand of water that my mother used to buy, and something that can just bring a bit more substance to the character, or it can bring more information about secondary characters or about the city. And we really tried to put all those little details everywhere. And that's rewarding for the player, because if he looks around, we have a lot of really small details that you can connect between each episode. Like in first episode, you can, on the campus, look at some message boards and see that a guy has posted a message because he's missing, he lost his tablet with pictures of his dead cats. And in next episode, you have another guy who can find another message of someone saying that he's selling a tablet with picture of cats. And that's really small details that maybe almost no players will find out, but some of those will, and it's really interesting for us and rewarding if you can just delve into those details.
Yeah, and I think also it makes the whole world, the whole universe realistic, and adding this kind of small layers will expand the world, even if it's like small texture.
For the Easter eggs, we can also talk about TV shows, but we try to. There is some Easter eggs, but there is also some just references in the game that some of the characters are talking about, because we also wanted to anchor the game into reality, and so that was important for us to be able to talk sometimes about movies, because teenagers will talk about movies together, or to talk about a TV show or some music band and stuff like that. So we really tried to. Of course, we had to deal with the legal issues with that. That's something that could be interesting to talk about, but might be really long. But we really worked with the legal department of the publisher to be able to name some movies, name some book authors, and even some brands in order to really anchor the game into a real world.
Okay, I think you can take the next slide. So let's talk about some about the technology behind the game. Are you using a specific game engine, or did you write your own?
It's Unreal 3, but it's like advanced version of Unreal 3. It's like 3.5, and we have modified it a lot for Remember Me, the previous game. For example, we've got our own coding structure, like it looks like a blueprint, like the Unreal 4 ones, but in Unreal 3, and we had a lot for all the lighting and the depth of field effect also.
And even the rendering, Unreal Engine 3 is not a PBR-based engine, but we've turned it into a PBR, a physically based rendering, and so we can maybe talk about the art style, because we took a lot of those new art technology we developed for Remember Me, which was quite a realistic game. And Life is Strange is not photorealistic at all, because that's something, when we first began working on the game, we had this keyword of nostalgia in mind, and we really thought that having a stylized rendering, what we are calling an impressionistic rendering, would work way better for this kind of game than a photorealistic one. Just to allow the player to put also some of his own feelings and his own memories into the visuals and the pictures, because sometimes when a game is over-detailed, you don't have any more room for imagination. You just look at everything and see every details on the wall, on the textures, and everything is there. So we really wanted to have this hand-painted feeling for the textures, and something much simpler for the characters, for the trees, for the faces, everything. And that was our goal. And also because we are thinking that this kind of rendering might age better. This is the kind of game that will still look good, I think, in a few years when you're going for the state-of-the-art technology. Sometimes it ages more quickly. And one of the biggest, for us, most important part of the visual style was the lighting. So we really tried, even if the style is quite simple, we used those high-end technology for the lighting, because light is something that, to us, is one of the most important part of a picture, of a visual. You can have some really low detail visuals. If you have a good lighting, it's always better than the high poly, that the best models with bad lighting. And light is something that really, we think, linked to memories, to emotions, because sometimes you are mostly remembering more how the light was on the sunset or on the time of day. You will remember more the lighting than some details of other elements. So that's why we went for this style.
Was it hard to implement the light? Development-wise?
Not really, because we already did a lot of work for Remember Me, so we had the tools and the tech from Remember Me, and we had the lighting artists that work with us on Remember Me who are really good, and we are really happy with the way we worked.
It's having a lighting artist doing only lights on scene. It's not something very common in the industry yet, even if it's beginning to change. But so this is something we wanted to have. We have 3 lighters and two at the same time during the whole production. So it's really something important compared to the team size.
3 lighting experts, and also you have 2 camera developers as well, just doing the camera. Interesting. What was the hardest part making Life is Strange? What was the hardest? Was it technology or the
episodic
storytelling?
format?
Oh, really?
I don't know. It's a difficult project because it's still a small game, and so it's a small budget. So, of course, you have to find solutions. For the episodic format, it's really something we wanted to have since the beginning on a creative point of view, but on a production point of view, it's really difficult because it's like doing 5 games, in fact. It's not, I do a game, I cut it in 5 and that's it. It's not like that at all. So yeah, it's like shipping 5 games. So you're shipping a game and you don't go to holidays, you can't say, okay, let's look at the review and do nothing during the day. You have to work on the other episodes. So it's a lot of pressure for the team, but also with the time between each episode, when you can see, because we're lucky and we've got good feedbacks, so you can see all the public community growing up, and all, of course, the players wanted to see more, so you really doing that for them, so it gives a lot of strength to the team to see all the feedbacks, all the let's play, all this kind of stuff, so yeah, it was maybe easier.
Yeah, episodic was hard. I think also, like we said in the beginning, the writing process, to be sure that we are not, like we said, like we are French, we are not messing up when we are writing those American characters. It was a challenge, and also, of course, the beginning of the project, all the questions like, this is a game we wanted to create when we were this small team. We didn't really think about marketing. We just thought, I think I've seen the previous talk, so we just went from the passion first, and not at all from the other way. So we just say, okay, let's work on this game we want to create, and we don't care about who we would sell it. And it was quite hard then to convince, even at first within the company, to convince the CEOs and people in the company that this was an interesting project, and after to convince publishers that it could be an interesting project. This was hard.
But seeing indie games, for example, like Gone Home, Going Out, stuff like that, it gives also a lot of hope because you see that there is a public also for this kind of story. So. Yeah.
Okay, so we are soon running out of time. Do you have any, time flies up here on stage. Do you have any advice to the young, aspiring game developers here today? Any advice, like never make episodic games or stuff like that?
Maybe, yeah, like we were saying before, we've got a lot of different inspiration for this game. It's not only cinema, but it's also a lot of books and stuff like that. Being here in this city is quite crazy because we have seen, I think, all the museums this afternoon, and you can find very inspiration everywhere. And I think it's really cool in this industry to see people coming from very different fields. So I think really you can find a lot of different inspiration by traveling, stuff like that, and maybe not just focusing on game. And this is, for me, it's really to be curious and want to also to tell different stories. But it's not really an advice, but sorry.
It is. And maybe it's maybe more when you're working on a game. I think that something that's really important is to stick to, if you have a good feeling about a core idea, about something cohesive, to try to stick with it, and it's important to brainstorm everywhere, but then it's also important to really focus on something that you feel great in a project, and be careful to not go too broad or to too many different places. I think that's something we tried to do with this game, and I'm not sure we succeeded completely, but we tried to really focus on the core themes of the project from the beginning, and to stick with it up to the end. And that, I think that's something that's quite important if you want to have a project that has a lot of meaning and maybe to really mean something at the end.
Okay, makes sense. A final question: will there be a sequel to Life is Strange 2? And can I beta test it?
Yes, for the second question, that if it exists, I'll let you.
Yeah, that's something we have to see with the publisher, because it's a Square Enix game, and we'd like to do a sequel, but that's something that we don't know for sure.
You have other games in the pipeline, or what are you doing next, or?
There is another game in DONTNOD, done by DONTNOD. Sorry, it's Vampire. It's about a vampire.
Okay.
Yes,
it's a different team.
We have two teams trying to work in parallel, and the other team is working on Vampire, and then we are starting to work on what could be the next projects for the Life is Strange team. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And you will be here during the afternoon and the evening, so you will mingle with all people, and you can come up and ask questions and all that stuff. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.